Hey guys, today we're going to be building this nice RGB addressable LED control program. As you can see, I have two of those LEDs that I bought from SparkFun, and we're going to go through wiring them up to an Arduino Nano and writing some code to control the LEDs. So the first thing you're going to get started with is the parts I'm using here. This is an Arduino Nano. It's a clone, a cheap clone actually. I picked them up, 5 of them for 18 bucks from Amazon. You do have to solder the headers on if you go for the cheaper ones, but it works just as well as the real thing. And then over here I have two RGB addressable LEDs. These are from SparkFun. I picked them from SparkFun for $2.95 for 5 of them. They work real well, and they're addressable, which is a good thing. That's what we're gonna go over today. And then I just have some jumper wires here to hook the whole circuit up. Typically you would use a few resistors, but these LEDs support up to 6 volts of voltage, which is more than the Arduino can give. The Arduino, we're gonna hook these up to a 5-volt line from the Arduino, so we're not gonna need any resistors for this. Alright, so let's get this whole thing hooked up. The first thing we're gonna start with is putting the Arduino on the breadboard. You gotta be careful when pushing down on these, especially on the cheap clones. The headers can really bend with very little force, so you gotta be very careful with those. So right now I have the Arduino on the board. I'm just gonna hook up these LEDs. One thing to note here, the longest of the lines of the LEDs or the connectors, this is how it typically looks like when you buy it. So the longest one is the ground, and that's what we're gonna, I just bend that over there so that I can have it hooked directly into the ground line without having to use any jumper wires and keep the circuit a little simpler. So we're gonna put that in there and make sure it hooks up properly. And I'm just gonna space it out a little bit and put the other one also over here. Okay, so the next step is to hook up the power. So we're gonna go from the 5-volt Arduino header pin over here, and then I'm gonna hook it up to the top of the power line on the breadboard. And for the ground, I'm going to do the same. The ground on the Arduino is 1 header over. So now that we have power over here, I'm going to go ahead and hook up the LED's power. So the second, if you start coming from the top in my setup, the second pin is the VCC power that the LED requires. So we are going to hook that up over here. And we're gonna hook the second one up over here. Even better, I'm just gonna flip them over to this side so that they're not obstructing the view of the LEDs. And then finally I'm gonna bridge both sides of, well actually I don't need to bridge this, I'll just bridge the positive here. Okay, so this way the power can come in from here and jump to the other side and then go back into the LEDs. The third pin is important. This is the data out pin. So I'm going to take that and hook it into the first pin of the second one. The first pin is the data in. So this allows us to have a command go from the first LED to the second LED, and then if you have a third and a fourth LED, it will go on. And finally I'm going to hook power to the Arduino. I have it connected through USB to my computer. Alright, so first step is going to be to download the NeoPixel, the Adafruit NeoPixel controller library. This allows us to control the RGB, the addressable RGB LEDs quite easily. So we're going to go over, we're pressing on Google Adafruit NeoPixel, and if you find the GitHub website, you can just go here and click the download zip, and that will download the zipped version of the library that you can see over here. I'm just going to double click that. And then you can see it right here in my downloads folder. Then I'm going to go over to the Arduino IDE, and I'm just going to go over sketch, include libraries, add zip library, and then under that, in downloads, find where I downloaded and click choose. And in my case, it's already installed. In your case, it probably will not be. So this is how you install the Adafruit NeoPixel library, and that allows you to add it easily to your sketch. So over here I have a brand new sketch, as you can see. Let me just expand that out. I can go to sketch, include libraries, and find the Adafruit NeoPixel library over here. And now it added that include. Additionally, you get some examples to use that for whatever it's usable for. And these examples allow you to get some inspiration of how you want your code to look like and understand how the code is supposed to work. So I'm going to close out this example over here. So I'm going to start with just a clean slate. And remember, we are having to control our LEDs that we added to the Arduino on pin 5. So first step we're going to start with is define a few macros. So we're going to say LED pin is going to be at 5, and then we're going to define number of pixels. Now this is number of pixels is number of LEDs in this case. Let me just space these out nicely. Number of pixels is really for the NeoPixel library, because it needs to know how many pixels or how many LEDs are attached to the controller pin. In this case, you only have 2. You could have hundreds. You could have a full LED screen attached. Could be anything. So next thing, we're going to define a delay, because we want to have these LEDs blink a little bit. So we're going to define a delay in milliseconds, and for now, let's just set it to 500 milliseconds, so half a second. Next up, we're going to define the controller object that's going to control all of the LEDs that we have, or both of the LEDs that we have. For that, we're going to use the Adafruit NeoPixel class. See how it's highlighted now? That means that we typed it correctly in this case. We're going to call them pixels, and we're going to just create a new object of that class, and we're going to pass it the number of pixels, the LED pin where we're going to control, and then we have to pass it these 2 settings. One says I want to feed the color data in red, green, blue format, and the other one is saying I want this to be 800 megahertz, or these LEDs have an 800 megahertz controller, which is true in this case for the LEDs that I have. Next in the setup, we have to initialize the library. So we do pixels.begin. Remember, everything in setup runs once, everything in loop runs continuously. Next up, we're going to have to set the color of the pixels. So we're going to be doing that repeatedly, and it's actually a couple of lines of code to do that. So to simplify our lives, we're going to create a helper method. We're going to call it setPixelColor. And it's going to accept the pixel index, which means the location of the pixel in a chain. And integer red, integer green, integer blue, which are the color values of the pixel that we want the pixel to look like. So this is going to simply call something from the library called setPixelColor, not to be confused with our helper method. And then we're going to pass it the pixel index, and then we're going to create a color object using pixels.color, and then we're going to pass it the red, green, blue values. Then we're going to type this magical command, which will make it apply those colors to the chain. So here we're saying whatever pixel index I pass in, whatever colors I pass in, set the pixel to the color I pass in, and then make it applicable so that we can see that on the board. So if you think about this now, we can just call this method and tell it I want to set the first LED or the second LED, and here's the colors I want to use for those LEDs. So for that, we're going to do simply, we're going to loop through all of the LEDs we have. So we're going to use something called the for loop. We're going to define an integer that's going to be the index of the pixels that we have. Then we're gonna iterate it from 0, which is the start index, which is the first pixel that has an index of 0, the second pixel will have an index of 1, and so on. And it's gonna go up to the number of pixels, to be less than the number of pixels, which is 2. So it's basically gonna have two values in this case, 0 and 1. And then we're gonna increment it in every iteration of the loop. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna set pixel color, and then we're gonna pass the I, which is the index, and then we're gonna say, okay, so remember it's red, green, blue, so if you want the pixel to be red, we're gonna just say 255. 255 is the max value that these accept, so you can have any value between 0 and 255, 0 being no color, 255 being the most intense shade of color. In this case I want the most intense shade of red, and then I'm gonna have 0 for the blue, for the green, and 0 for the blue. So this is gonna turn the LED red. Then I'm gonna throw a delay over here and say delay. Remember, delay in milliseconds is a macro that I define up top. It's only 500 milliseconds right now. And then I'm going to set the pixel color. Again, of this one pixel that I'm iterating over right now. And I'm gonna set it to green this time. And I'm gonna do another delay. Set pixel color, same pixel to blue. Alright, so of course you can mix colors if you like. In this case I just want to make it clear and simple because this is the first example. Then I'm going to put a delay and then just turn off the LED so that we know that this one iteration of the loop for this LED is over. To turn off the LED, you're just going to pass it all zeros. And that's it. That's the whole of the code, and we're going to call it Addressable RGB LED control. You can call it whatever. Alright, so the code is all set, and I'm going to start running it right now by compiling it first. Make sure it compiles. Of course, just to make sure, you have to have Arduino Nano, whatever board you're using, checked over here, selected, and the right processor and the right serial port for it. Okay, so it looks like this compiled just fine, and now I'm going to upload it over. Alright, so we're ready to upload the code to our LEDs here, or our Arduino, and then we're going to take a look and see what's going to happen to the LED. The one thing that I didn't have in the initial hookup is this this extra jumper here that's going to go from pin 5. This is where the control signals are going to come for these, for the color control, and this is going to go to the very first pin of the addressable LED, which is RG, which is basically data in. I already had the code uploaded, but let me upload it again over here. Now let's do this again actually. So that's it. That's how you can control the addressable RGB LEDs using Arduino Nano and a little bit of simple code relying on the Adafruit NeoPixel library. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button on the bottom, and have a nice day.